Good evening and welcome to Democratic TV, a weekly public affairs show that is prepared for our community television in Knoxville. My name is Doug Beam and I'm your host for this evening. The topic of this evening's show is a discussion of the recent decision by the Knoxville Utilities Board and the Knoxville City Council to create a new public utility in Knoxville, high-speed broadband service, which will be offered to all of KUB's electrical customers over the next few years. Joining me in this panel are KUB's 3 and 4 members here to add to our discussion about the broadband and what the addition of this utility can mean for the citizens of Knoxville and for the customers of the Knoxville Utility Board. Our panel this evening includes Erin Gill, the Deputy Mayor, Chief Policy Officer in Indiana County's administration, Jamie Davis, the Vice President of Fiber Development and Chief Technical Officer of KUB, and my friend Brady Watson, the Civic Engagement Officer for the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy. So let's get this going this way. Let me ask this of the panel, but I'm really kind of directing it first at Erin. What were the policy changes in the city of Knoxville that made possible for the City Council and the KUB Board to authorize the new utility, and what do you expect the addition of the broadband internet service to do for the customers of KUB, for the citizens of Knoxville and Knox County and the service area, and for the education system and the systems that are in play already? Why were we able to do that this year when 10 years ago they did that down in Chattanooga and we weren't ready for that? What's changed, and what should we be patting ourselves on the back for, Erin?
Yeah, thank you, Doug. It's good to be here with my friends Brady and Jamie, and really thrilled to represent the city. But I also want to acknowledge that this truly would not be possible without the partnership of KUB. And so I hope that Jamie can chime in on some of these questions as well. They play an important role as our local municipal utility. So as you alluded to, City Council voted earlier this summer in late June to authorize KUB to provide broadband services, internet services to customers within their service territory. That vote is a vote that was actually required by state law to enable municipal utilities to provide internet service, similar to what we see offered by private companies. Mm-hmm. So City Council reviewed that authorization and ultimately decided that they would support KUB's request to provide those services. And it's really such an opportunity, not only for our economy, for the users of the broadband services, hopefully in the future, but it's all predicated on the fact that KUB is making a significant investment in fiber infrastructure that benefits its electric grid. So when we think about what it means to be a 21st century electrical grid, the bread and butter of what KUB provides day in and day out to the citizens of Knoxville, that fiber is really setting us up for the grid of the future. And as a benefit to that fiber infrastructure, there's an opportunity to offer the broadband services as a result of that. And so we were really thrilled to see KUB take this step, again, built on this core foundational infrastructure that they need to build the grid of the future. But again, opening up an opportunity for customers to benefit from broadband internet. So I know we'll talk a lot about this on the show. We see tremendous opportunity for this to benefit our local economy, for education, for health, for so many other services. But I know we can come back to that. So I'll let my fellow colleagues here on the panel speak up to some of the questions that you asked.
At some point, should we have Stephanie Welsh on and talk to her about this? Would she be one of those who might tell us, has been thinking about it, to what the economic benefits are?
I think all of us can talk to that as well. There's been some significant economic development research that's taken place as part of KUB's analysis and City Council's analysis. So Stephanie is always a champion of this as well, but hopefully we won't have to wait until the next show to cover some of those topics.
Yeah, good for you. Let me ask Jamie a couple of questions here that came to mind as I listen to you first. And also, Brady has kind of taught me some of the things that you just talked about, Erin, about the fact that the broadband goes to much more than just me, who's going to be using it in my television set here at home. So that's already started, and he started working on that pretty well. But Jamie, what happened at KUB that we're going to do this, or we're going to try to do this, or it's now reasonable for us to do this, or whatever.
Well, Doug, you referenced, the last decade, and a lot's changed. And I would point to just a couple of things. Is the model that we're using and the plans really have been proven out over the last decade, both locally, what we would point to in a national and international leader in municipal broadband in Chattanooga, but really nationwide. The stimulus grants of '08 really provided for an opportunity to really spearhead a lot of things that we're now proving out to be great business investments within grid modernization. So we're excited about the utility side benefits that my friend Erin talked about, but it really is an enabling technology that ultimately allows us to be able to provide broadband service. And so I guess I would point to very simply one, Chattanooga's kind of proven that it can work and work locally. Two is that, boy, how fast forward did the pandemic really create a need for broadband services? I mean, you mentioned a couple of things that we're starting to really get into using broadband services: telemedicine, education, business. But we often talk and say, did the pandemic fast forward us 1 or 2 decades in that regard? And so it really highlighted the need for fast, reliable, unlimited broadband service. And so that's really kind of what brought KUB to the table, to really take another hard look at it again.
Some of the uses you just talked about, let me just interject this, as I won't remember it later, but I am a disabled veteran, and my disability has come to the fore in the last 3 or 4 years more than it did before that. It relates back to my Vietnam service, but it came to the fore. And I'm not saying that to see feel sorry for me. I'm just saying that during the time that I was being evaluated for this, we weren't going anywhere. And a lot of the evaluations that were made by the doctors, the nurses, and the people who had to make a decision about what was my disability and how did it affect me and all of these kinds of things, we did in a sense, on Zoom, Skype, or whatever, which would not have been possible without some kind of high-speed internet that worked for me and whatever. And so I will tell you that just from a very simple thing like that, it was an amazing kind of thing. Plus, my annual physical was essentially done through that.
Well, if you think about, we heard anecdotally that, if where the hospital and doctor's offices where sick folks were going during the pandemic, that's not necessarily where you wanted to take well folk.
That's right.
And so telemedicine was a great tool that helped bridge that gap. So to your point, we heard a lot of that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. Anyway, so now we know that several things changed enough so that this became a possibility. I presume you kind of roll through all the things that had to be done, presumably your investments that you're making 10 years ago are all completed and land like that. But now that you've at this point, one, what are you going to bring to the customers who buy the broadband service? And what do they get when they buy that service? Do they get streaming video, or do they get a remote they can't figure out how to use?
We sure hope that's not the case. Our plans, when we talk about the services we're going to provide, generally it's the triple play that you are familiar with current existing providers, but at the core and really the foundation, and one of the really big reasons we're doing this is the internet. Our entry level package for what we call a residential customer would be a gigabyte download, gigabyte upload, unlimited usage, projected to be right at $65 a month. And that's very consistent with what Chattanooga is offering. Actually, our entry level is a little bit higher and a little bit faster. In that regard, we wanted to offer everyone in Knoxville and really in our electric service territory the opportunity to have really kind of a world-class opportunity of service related to internet. And we get really excited to talk about the internet, and we kind of look over the other entertainment kind of connectivity that you'll have an option to, but we anticipate offering a branded streaming service, if you will. It'll look and feel just like what you're used to with other providers that provide TV with the same type of channel lineups. We're still working on that. I encourage folks that are interested in that, go to EPB's website. You can kind of see something that looks similar to what we think we'll be offering. And then a lot of folks are getting away from their home phones. But indeed, if you want a voice over IP phone, we intend to offer that as well so that you could have that as part of the package. So there's options there. You have to, in order to get to the TV, you have to take the internet, but you don't have to have our TV package if you don't want to. If you have, like a lot of us do, you cut the cord and you're using YouTube TV or Hulu or Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever it is, you can bring those to the table, and that's great if you just want to be a KUB internet customer. I'm not hearing your question, Doug. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're muted, Doug.
I was saying that I said that so that if you you can use the internet for a lot of reasons other than just to watch television. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, what we heard from our customers during our research was a lot of folks are working from home. A lot of folks utilizing their service to do heavy research, heavy move of data. In our public meetings that we held, we heard from a number of folks who were saying that the existing services they have really didn't enable them in a technological economy to do what they needed to do in their homes. And so they were very excited about the services that we were proposing to offer.
Brady has talked to me a lot about the collateral things that go with it. I think power saving is one of the things that he's suggested that can happen. The guy who reads my meter is no longer going to have to come into my backyard, so I don't have to unlock the gate for him to get in, kind of thing. That's what I see it as. But
yeah, our first generation of automated meter reading is out and in effect already, and we actually use wireless technology for that. But other future utility site applications are what I'll call maybe at a distribution system level is a good example of smart switches that improve reliability. Chattanooga saw an over 40% improvement in their reliability. We can't keep outages from occurring, but we can impact maybe the magnitude of them. And so we're excited about that. We're going to roll out that as we roll out our fiber. But there are other great environmental, I'll call really kind of environmental and operational benefit tools too, that help us run our system more efficient. And as we run our system more efficient, that's both an economic win, an environmental win, and ultimately our customers and our community benefit. We see those technologies helping the city meet their goals as far as carbon reduction. And so we're excited about to play an even bigger part in that role than we are today. So,
a customer what's going to be the incentive, do you think, for customers to really sign on? I mean, the monthly service that you're talking about in terms of cost isn't particularly going to be seen, I don't think, as a bargain, not necessarily as high either, but just it's not something that I automatically will plug into. But so what do you think who's going to be the first users of this? Who are going to be the guys who pave the way for the rest of us?
Well, I think that there's probably two things I would talk about that I think in general about municipal broadband that are real distinguishing factors. One of which is we've kind of talked about, it's the speed. A base package of gigabyte symmetrical, you'll hear that word used a lot, of both upload and download speeds equal, is very unique. It's not offered in typical residential packages from for-profit providers. And so that makes us unique in that regard. And so very fast, symmetrical, and then unlimited. Use all you want, we'll make more. That's not usually what you get at a base package.
Okay.
And I would also offer up that there is a notion that maybe not all packages that our current existing providers provide would be cheaper, but we think will be very competitive. In a lot of cases, indeed, our package will result in some cost savings for our consumers here in Knoxville.
Will it be simpler, do you think, to sign into yours than it is to somebody else's?
I sure hope so. We have a goal of everything that we do at KUB to be easy for our customers. We don't always get that right, but we strive to do that. But that definitely is a goal, Doug, that hopefully the customer service we can provide, it'll be local. It'll be here in town. The person you're talking to on the other line will be one of your neighbors here in Knoxville. And so we think that provides a distinct advantage for municipal broadband as well.
If I can add one more advantage for municipal broadband, and I think Jamie's hit some really important high points about the homegrown nature of this product. But one of the other things that's really critical as we think about this role of KUB as a public utility is that they have an obligation to serve that our local existing providers do not have. And there are, I think I just looked up this track from 2019, there were almost 16% of households just in Knox County that had no internet at the household level. And when you look at low-income households, that number drops to close to 40%. So there's a huge digital equity element to this investment that should not be overlooked, because there are members of our community, both in Knoxville and Knox County, but especially in our rural neighbors, where there is no internet provider. And KUB, by entering this business, has to provide that service, just as they have to provide electric. And that's a really important gap to fill.
I grew up on a farm in western Minnesota, and I remember the day that the Rural Electrification Association, the REA, rolled into our farmstead with their trucks and their poles and their wires. That was in 1948. It didn't happen. It happened after the war. But I mean, I see our broadband service that you're offering akin to what REA was back in the 40s and the 30s, in the sense that and they were bringing it to every farm. You didn't have to be a special farmer to have that. You got it. And so,
it's obviously an optional service. If folks don't want to take it, they don't have to.
well, that was the other thing. They're not going to pay. They don't have to pay for it if they don't want it, right?
That's right. But at our core is that public power model that you mentioned, Doug, and it is an obligation to serve. And what we see, to Erin's point about digital equity, is we hear a lot of terms in this industry now about underserved and unserved. And we have, honestly, throughout our electric service territory, whether it's in rural Union County, where there aren't viable options, or whether it's inside the Beltway of Knoxville, there really is our gaps, and for a multitude of reasons. But our obligation will be to extend this product to everybody that's an electric customer of KUB. So not only all of the Knoxville city proper, large portion of Knox County we serve. Our service territory to the west stops around Cedar Bluff, and large part of Union County, large part of Granger County, we serve those customers as well too. So I'm excited about extending our product to folks who've really been kind of clamoring for an adequate service.
Sure. So Erin, what's the scuttlebutt around the office about this in terms of is the staff excited about it? Are they talking about it? Or are they ready to market it? Those kinds of things?
Yeah, absolutely. This was one of the signature priorities that Mayor Kincannon has talked about, both as a candidate and as mayor, which is, again, why we are so excited to see it moving forward with KUB's leadership. One of the realities of being in a 21st century economy is that when companies as well as employees are looking to select where to locate, whether that's a business or as a family, looking for high quality internet is a priority. And so in talking with our local Chamber of Commerce, in talking with the university and the lab and the major employers who are already here, there's a huge recognition that this is going to accelerate our ability to really bring new economic growth to the city, but also make sure that the people who are here have access to the internet in a way that can connect them with opportunities anywhere in the world. And the employment opportunities that come with that are very tremendous. So it's a huge growth opportunity, I think, both in supporting local residents who are here now, but also potentially in gaining some new ones.
Sure. I had lunch with a couple of my economist friends today. And we were talking about what's happened to the labor force, where has it gone to? And one of the quick answer was, they're in their own businesses. They're not employees anymore, and they're doing other things. And I'm assuming that the internet is going to be one of those ways that they make a living in a way that they didn't before. Brady, what do you guys what are you telling your colleagues at SACE about this, and will you help us market it?
Yeah, so I think it was touched on, and I appreciate Jamie bringing up the environmental, benefits. I think a lot of this, is going to benefit the electric grid, which is our kind of main forte, if you will. It's going to lead to more efficient distribution of power. It's going to, reduce outages, which is good, which means fewer trucks being rolled out to fix those outages, fewer, transportation related emissions, which is a good thing. It means, smart meters, which also reduce emissions and can make it more efficient. And so those are all very positive things. I think one thing I wanted to follow up on is, I know we talk about kind of the digital divides and kind of the lack of access, underserved or unserved. And this is probably a question for Jamie, but how do you all, as far as like actually rolling out these services, how do you plan to make sure the folks that actually need it the most receive it? And then also, I was curious, I know that there was a low income program that was agreed to with both City Council and KUB. So I was just curious if you could give any updates on that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. The number one question we get asked nowadays is, well, where are you going first? And so we're working hard on those plans and hope to be able to share that with the public soon. But, really, in some regards, it's almost like a storm restoration for KUB in that we go to where we can help the most people the soonest. And so that's a lens that we look through as we try to forge our plans. But you really mentioned something that's at the core of this is I think our board chair, Jerry Askew, said that in a lot of cases, this is a heart issue and not a head issue as it relates to trying to help people with this. And so we have tried to cast that net. And I'll tell you, it really echoes something I just said, is the need is everywhere. We have not been able to find a particular area that says, oh, it's this part of our town or this part of our service territory. And so we're trying to use that to balance, but at the same time, knowing that we can't meet all those needs right out the gate. And then Erin touched on another issue too, which is this fiber really is for utility need. We know which of our circuits don't perform as well as others. And so we want to get that fiber to those pieces of infrastructure. We know where we have infrastructure like our water plant or wastewater plant or our electric substations. And so we want to get fiber close to that to use some of those utility side applications. So you hear the term balanced scorecard. We're going to try to use that, but definitely overlaying all that. And we've talked to our customer advisory panel. City council wanted to sure that we engaged our customers to understand where those needs are in our community, that we're trying to go to meet those needs and meet those customers where they are at. And at the same point in time, again, this is a business. And so you do go where you can serve the most people the quickest in that particular regard. But we're going to try to balance all those needs as we consider how we roll that out. Now, as far as the low income program, Erin and I, the city and KUB are working together right now as we speak, trying to understand what the framework of that looks like. And the easiest way to point folks to kind of what we hope to achieve is something what, again, our friends at Chattanooga have done in conjunction with the city, the county, and Hamilton County school systems, where they offer all kids that are on free or reduced lunch access to the internet. And so our pledge is to work with our community partners. This will have to be a public-private partnership. We're hopeful that, again, federal funding, state funding that's kind of being discussed right now can help play a role, but that utilizing the funding we have and the criteria, we hope to be able to forge that out. So we're working with our community partners and seeking discussions on that. But that's really kind of where that's at today. It's kind of an aspirational goal, but we're committed to making that happen. So Erin, I'll let you share any other thoughts you may have on that as well.
No, I think you covered it well, Jamie. And I think the underscore here is that it was very important to City Council and the city administration, as well as, of course, as Jamie mentioned, KUB, to recognize that if we were going to make this investment with all ratepayers being part of how we pay for it, that we wanted to make sure that all ratepayers ended up having that access, including those who may be otherwise financially limited. And so this program is designed to help fill that gap. And we recognize that, while the city can play a funding role, as Jamie alluded to, we're going to have other partners at the table. And so depending on how that finally will come to pass, we'll be able to determine what the eligibility can look like.
That's good to hear. How am I going to know when you guys start rolling this thing out? What am I going to have trucks in my driveway or on my street or trees knocked down so you get to the pole? What's going to happen there?
We sure don't want that to happen, Doug. We will definitely coordinate with folks. We obviously want to let folks know we're coming and work with those communities, just like what we do on all of our other capital projects. But again, folks are asking that question, when are you going to get to me? And so we know that we want to communicate with our folks. With our customers, we want to be as transparent as possible. And so I think there'll be communication methods no different than when we do come trim your trees or replace a sewer line down your road. We'll be talking to our community early and often once we kind of finalize our plans. But right now, 7-year build out, so it's going to be in phases. We're hopeful that federal monies that very well may be available. You've heard Governor Lee's administration working with the legislatures put about $500 million into this space as well too. We're anxious for final rules on those, and KUB will be working to get all the grants we can in that particular regard, and that very well could also kind of slate where we go and when. If there's grant funding for those particular type of areas, typically those are rural areas. So we're hopeful for that. And it may also compress that time frame. Who knows how that may play out? So more to come, I guess, is a long answer, Doug, to say, but we'll definitely be in communication as we share information with our board, with the mayor's administration, city council, and the county as well too, and the other counties we serve.
Are there any technological issues ahead of you that might be of concern? Are we always going to want to have wired fiber optics lines, or is there a time when it's going to be in the ether or whatever.
Well, you know, a lot of folks ask that question. You know, a lot of us hear about 5G and things like that. And I always say to folks, I think it's an and instead of an or. There are technological limitations of wired versus wireless. And I think that will always exist. You know, it always gets better. For those of us that remember our early cell phones, these are way faster than what we have today than we used to. But the great thing about fiber is, one, it's very durable and it's timeless. It's literally just fibers of glass. And it's only limited by the electronics that you put on either side of it. So even our friends in Chattanooga have upgraded those electronics on either side of it. Think about going from the iPhone 2 to the iPhone, whatever we're on these days, the 12. So that's what you'll see in the technological space. But I know personally, I want KUB wired fiber at my home, but I also want my 5G service as well too. And so I think you'll see a lot of consumers. It'll be an and complementary. But obviously in the space, some folks are going to total, you know, unwired services in that regard, and that's an option as well too. But industry kind of shows. I mean, Chattanooga has about a 70% take rate of their consumers in the market, and other folks are still using a wired service in the marketplace. Just honestly, because of
their competition is a wired service, not wireless service, is what you say.
Yeah. I mean, there's some that have, you know, we all have friends who said, "Oh, I cut that cord as well, and I just use my wireless deal." But I would submit to you that more consumers than not have a wired service as well.
We're down to our closing minutes. Is there something we didn't cover that you guys are just burning to get out? Brady does something.
I just real quick, we mentioned rates. I know there's a rate increase to help pay for this. Can you cover that? And
absolutely,
real quick, Jamie? Yeah,
absolutely. So a lot of folks say, "Well, how are you going to pay for it?" And we're paying for this, obviously, since this is utility infrastructure. We're paying for it exactly the way we do with our other projects, with a blend of both debt, in our case, bond issues, and with revenue, meaning rate increases. And so to really kind of keep it simple, there's our planned and approved recently, we'll be in second reading at our next board meeting, 3% rate increases for the next 3 years, of which, of note, 2/3 of that was already planned with our other Century 2 capital program. So to kind of put that in perspective, KUB's average customer uses right at 1,100 kWh a month. And what that means effectively is that the full implementation of those 3% rate increases, it's around $10 a month for the consumer. So if you kind of think of it back to kind of your question, Doug, about that value proposition, if you're a current subscriber of internet, I think there is a wallet impact. I think you may pay a little bit more for your electricity, but again, you may receive a benefit from your internet or your cable bill in that regard. The good news is too, is what we've seen in Chattanooga is fiber leases that space. They pay their fair share. Every dime that they cost, they pay the electric division back for basically rent on the fiber. In Chattanooga, that's become such a revenue source for the electric division. They've had rate stability for the last 10 years and haven't had a rate increase.
That's interesting.
That is in our projection as well too. That is our goal as part of our financial plan, is that in our current financial plan, it's these 3% rate increases and none for the remaining years of our 10-year plan.
We're gonna have to close it off here because they're gonna cut us off down as community television. But I just want to say thank to Jamie and Erin and Brady. Thanks for being on this show tonight, and to you, to our viewing audience, thank you for watching this informative discussion of broadband in Knoxville. Tune in again next week at 9:30 p.m. for another discussion of public affairs for Knoxville and Knox County. I'm Doug Beam, and thank you for watching. See you next week.